People will tell you that graphics don't matter, that gameplay is everything, that visuals are just surface. Those people have not played the games on this list, because there is something that happens when a game looks this good, when the light hits a surface exactly right, when a face holds an emotion with perfect precision, when a world is so detailed that every corner feels alive. It's not just about looking good, it's about feeling real. Today I give you 20 games, 20 worlds that will make you stop, that will make you move the camera slowly just to appreciate the scenery around you. As always, leave a like to the video and subscribe to the channel. If you love the gaming world, I'm sure you will enjoy this channel. I'm Yugito and let's talk about it. Horizon Forbidden West is without question one of the most visual ambitious open world games ever made. But what truly separates Forbidden West from everything else is the water and the machines. The water simulation is extraordinary. Rivers react dynamically to Aloy's movement. Underwater environments have a depth and clarity that feels genuinely immersive. And ocean surface catch light in ways that are almost photographic. And the machines themselves are a technical marvel. Thousands of individual moving parts, surface that reflects environments in real time, and damage models so detailed that every component you destroy changes the way the creature moves and behaves. This is a game where looking closely always rewards you. Dead Island 2 spent over a decade in struggle development, passed between studios, rebooted multiple times, announced and then seemingly forgotten. And when it finally arrived in 2023, it did something that nobody expected. It arrived polished, confident, and visually stunning in a way that made the wait feel almost justified. What makes Dead Island 2 graphically remarkable is its flash system. Every zombie is a layered simulation of skin, muscle, bone and fat, and as you fight, each layer reacts independently and realistically to damage. And you have an endless type of weapons to craft and use. Here the limit is your creativity, combined with a permanent California sunshine, which creates a unique unsettling contrast between the beauty of LA and the horror happening inside it. Dead Island 2 is one of the most visual beautiful games of its generation. Rise of Tomb Raider arrived in 2015 and immediately established itself as one of the most visually striking games of the generation. The graphical details that truly define Rise of Tomb Raider are the snow simulation. It deforms realistically under Lara's feet, accumulates dynamically on surface and reacts to wind and weather. The lighting in underground tombs, illuminated only by torches and natural cracks in rocks, creates a contrast of darkness and warm golden light that is almost painterly. But the most impressive technical achievement is Lara's hair. Using a system of thousands of individually simulated strands, her hair reacts in real time to wind, water, movement, and gravity, combined with facial expressions that communicate fatigue, fear, and determination with genuine delicacy. Lara Croft in this game feels less like a game character and more like a real person. Avatar: Frontiers of Pandora offers one of the most unique and incredible worlds ever created. The fans of the movies finally can see Pandora, the most visually remarkable alien world ever conceived for cinema, with enough fidelity and detail that players who had spent years imagining themselves inside James Cameron's universe would feel that the game had finally delivered on that promise. The two graphical elements that make Frontiers of Pandora genuinely breathtaking are its bioluminescence and vegetation density. At night, Pandora transforms completely. Plants, creatures, and the ground itself emits a light in cascading waves of blue, green, and purple that react to movement and touch, creating environments that feel simultaneously alien and magical. And the vegetation system is unlike anything in open world gaming. Every leaf, every branch, every blade of alien grass moves independently and realistically in response to wind, weather, and the player's movement. Any given moment represents a technical achievement that very few games have matched. Hideo Kojima has always treated his games as visual art first and everything else second, and Death Stranding 2 is the most complete expression of that philosophy he has ever produced, built on a heavily modified version of the Decima engine, the same technology behind Horizon Forbidden West. In Death Stranding 2, the sky system is extraordinary. Clouds form, move and dissipate in real time, in ways that create constantly shifting atmospheric conditions that transform the mood of every environment. But it is the timefall that represents the game's most stunning technical achievement. Every raindrop is individually simulated, creating ripple patterns on surface with physical accuracy and catching light in ways that turn every storm into something simultaneously terrifying and beautiful. The bad weather is the most visual spectacular thing you'll ever see in a video game. But it is the facial performances that are perhaps the most quietly extraordinary achievement. Kojima casts some of the most recognizable faces in cinema, and the engine captures every micro-expression, every subtle shift of emotion that no other game has matched. In cutscenes, you are not watching characters, you are watching people. The line between performance capture and reality has never been this thin. The Callisto Protocol arrived in 2022 with one of the creators of the original Dead Space, and the result is an environment so oppressive, so claustrophobic, and so graphically detailed that the player never once feels safe. The graphical details that define the Callisto Protocol are in its skin and its darkness. The creature design uses a skin simulation system that renders every pore, every vein, every grotesque transformation of human flesh into something inhuman with a physical accuracy that is genuinely disturbing to look at closely. But it is the darkness that is the game's true visual achievement, a lighting system so sophisticated that shadows have texture and depth, that the transition between light and dark feels physical rather than digital, and that a single flickering light source can transform a familiar corridor into something genuinely terrifying. Combined with facial expressions on Jacob, the protagonist, that communicate raw panic and physical fatigue with remarkable accuracy. The Callisto Protocol is one of the most atmospherically convincing horror games, and you can experience that right in the start of the game, when Jacob gets an implant on his neck and the whole scene feels so damn real. Uncharted 4 arrived in 2016 and immediately redefined what a narrative action game could look like. Every environment felt like it had been art-directed with the precision of a film set. Every rock formation, every crumbling ruin, every patch of jungle vegetation placed with deliberate intention. Nathan Drake's face tells the entire emotional story of the game without a single word of dialogue being necessary. The micro-expressions, the way a smile doesn't quite reach his eyes in certain moments, the way fatigue and doubt accumulate across his face over the course of the game, represent a facial animation achievement that was years ahead of its time. Uncharted 4 didn't just look like a movie. In its best moments, it felt like one. And then The Lost Legacy arrived in 2017 and pushed the same engine even further, this time into the lush, dense jungles and ancient temples of India. Every ruin is covered in moss, vines, and centuries of weathering that makes them feel genuinely ancient, like places that existed long before the game did and will exist long after it ends. The rain in Lost Legacy deserves a special mention, and the dynamic between Chloe and Nadine, it's amazing. The Lost Legacy was released as a standalone expansion, but it deserves to be celebrated as a masterpiece in its own right. Microsoft Flight Simulator is not just a game, it's the most ambitious attempt to recreate the entire surface of planet Earth ever undertaken in the history of interactive entertainment, using a combination of satellite imagery, AI-generated terrain reconstruction, real-time weather data, and photogrammetry of thousands of airports and landmarks around the world. This is not a simulation of flying, it is a simulation of the world, and flying happens to be how you explore it. Flying through a storm in Flight Simulator is one of the most visually overwhelming experiences gaming has ever produced, but it is the sense of scale that is the true revelation. The moment you climb above 10,000 feet and the curvature of the Earth becomes visible at the edges of your windshield, and you look down at the cities and coastlines, and you understand for the first time what the planet actually looks like from above. No other game has ever made you feel the size of the world quite like this. Alan Wake 2 is the most visually realistic game Remedy Entertainment has ever made. The game doesn't just look realistic, it looks cinematic in a way that no other game has achieved before or since. The two graphical elements that define Alan Wake 2 are its lighting and a dark place. The lighting system is transformative. The way a single street light illuminates falling rain in a dark forest, the way neon signs reflect across wet asphalt in layers of color and depth, the way a firelight creates dynamic shadows that move and breathe with physical accuracy. Every light source in this game feels like it was placed by a cinematographer rather than a game designer. And the dark place, the nightmarish dimension where Alan is trapped and forced to rewrite reality, is perhaps the most visually original environment in gaming history. A broken, fragmented version of New York City where logic dissolves and the rules of light and space no longer apply, rendered with surreal beauty that is breathtaking. Alan Wake 2 doesn't just use graphics to look good, it uses them to tell the story, and the combination of technical ambition and artistic intention makes it one of the most visually remarkable games ever made. The Forza Horizon series has always been the benchmark for automotive visual fidelity in gaming, and Forza Horizon 6, the most technical advanced entry in the franchise, pushes that benchmark to a point where the distinction between a photograph of a real car and the in-game screenshot is genuinely difficult to identify. The reflections and weather system are surreal. Every vehicle surface acts as a dynamic mirror, reflecting the environment around it in real time with physical accuracy. Drive past a forest and the trees appear across the hood. Enter a tunnel and the lighting transition plays out across every panel of the car simultaneously, and the weather system transforms every race into a visual spectacle that no other racing game has come close to matching. In Forza Horizon 6, standing still and simply looking at your car in the right light is the most visually satisfying thing gaming has to offer. There are games that look impressive, and there are games that use visuals as a narrative instrument, where every graphical decision serves the story, the emotion, and the human experience at the center of everything. The Last of Us Part 1 and Part 2 are the purest expression of the second category that gaming has ever produced. I include both games here because both are games that everyone should play and experience at least once in a lifetime. They build a beautiful world that make the tragedy inside it feel real. Every location tells a story through its visual decay. Every abandoned room has a story written in details. But it is the faces that are the true masterpiece of both games. Joel's face in Part 1 carries the specific weight of grief that has calcified into numbness over 20 years. It is visible in the set of his jaw, in the way his eyes hold back rather than reveal. And Ellie in Part 2 and Abby carry entire emotional journeys through meager expression of extraordinary precision. There is a moment in Part 2 where Ellie's face moves through rage, grief, and something approaching self-recognition in the space of few seconds. It is one of the greatest acting performances in the history of video games. That's what The Last of Us Part 2 achieved, and nothing has surpassed it since. There is always conversation about how real a game can be, how real they can mimic human expressions with accuracy, how a character can feel like a real person. SENUA'S Saga HELLBLADE 2 ended that conversation, developed by Ninja Theory, using Unreal Engine 5 at its absolute limit. HELLBLADE 2 is the closest gaming has ever come to rendering a human being with complete photographic accuracy. This is not a character model, this is a person, and the gap between those two things, HELLBLADE 2 closes completely. The environments of Iceland are rendered with the same obsessive fidelity. The weather system creates a storm of genuine atmospheric drama. Lava flows with fluid simulation accuracy, and the scale of environments creates a sense of human fragility against natural force that no other game has ever communicated this powerfully through visuals alone. HELLBLADE 2 is not just the best looking game ever made, it is proof that gaming has finally completely arrived as a visual art form. Quantic Dream has always built games around a single obsession, the human face. Every project the studio has ever made has been at its core an experiment in how much emotion a render face can carry. And Detroit Become Human represents the fullest and most sophisticated expression of that obsession. A game built entirely around the premise that androids can become human, and that you will only believe that premise if their faces make you believe it. The facial technology in Detroit Become Human was, at the time of its release, the most advanced ever put into a consumer game. Every character was captured using a photogrammic process that recorded thousands of reference points across the actor's face, creating models of extraordinary geometric precision. Connor's face, in particular, is a masterpiece of subtle performance. An android learning to simulate humanity, rendered by a system sophisticated enough to show the precise moment when simulation becomes something more genuine. Detroit Become Human, it is still to this day one of the most realistic games ever made. CD Projekt Red spent years building Night City, and every one of those years is visible in the detail. But it is at night, in the rain, with ray tracing and path tracing enabled, that Cyberpunk 2077 becomes something genuinely unmatched in gaming visuals. The neon sign reflections create a visual environment so complex and so beautiful that simply walking through Night City at night feels like moving through a painting that somehow also has depth and physics and the smell of rain. And the facial performances completely rebuilt with the 2.0 update, now rival with cinematic productions. This face carries the weight of every decision the player makes. Johnny Silverhand, rendered with a specific physical presence of Keanu Reeves, feels less like a character and more like a person sharing your headspace. Cyberpunk 2077 had a disastrous launch, but what it became is one of the greatest achievements in the history of the video games. Every environment in Metro Exodus feels like a real place that real people once lived in, and that something terrible happened to. The decay is specific. The world has a history that you can read in its surface. The lighting system creates interior environments of extraordinary intimacy. The creature design is among the most disturbing in gaming. Mutated bears with exposed muscle and bone, blind humanoid creatures that hunt by sound alone, enormous aquatic predators that emerge from water with physical presence that makes every river crossing genuinely terrifying. Each monster feels like real products of radiation. But the most uniquely immersive graphical detail in Metro Exodus is Artyom's gas mask. The mask is a living object. It fogs with breath in cold environments, cracks and scratches accumulate with damage, raindrops run across the visor, and the filters, which must be physically replaced in real time when they expire. And the human environments, the camps, the shelters, the vehicles that Artyom and his companions inhabit, are filled with personal details that tell stories without words. Photographs photographs pinned to walls, hand-drawn maps, personal objects arranged with specific care of people who have lost everything except what they carry. Metro Exodus doesn't just render a world, it renders the people who used to live in it, and the humanity, visible in every detail of every environment, is what makes it one of the most visually affecting games ever made. The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt was released in 2015, and a decade later it is still being discussed as one of the most visually accomplished open world games ever made. Every village looks different because every village has a different story. Every forest has a different character. Every region of the world has a visual identity so distinct that you always know exactly where you are without a map. The graphical details that elevate The Witcher 3 above everything else is the weather, the monsters, and Geralt himself. The weather system creates storms of genuine atmospheric drama. The monster design draws from a genuine Slavic folklore and renders each creature with biological accuracy that makes them feel like real animals that evolve in a real ecosystem. It's one of the most visually original creature designs in gaming history, and Geralt's face communicates more about his character in a single close-up than most games manage across an entire narrative. The Witcher 3 is 10 years old, and it still looks better than most games released today. When Sony and Bluepoint Games announced a remake of Demon's Souls as a PlayStation 5 launch title in 2020, the expectation was a visual upgrade. What arrived was something far more ambitious. Bluepoint didn't just improve the original, they revealed what the original had always been trying to look like, and gave it the technology to finally get there. Every surface in Boletaria has a physical texture that reacts to light with scientific accuracy. Metal armor reflects environments with mirror precision, individual scratches and dents catching light at a different angle simultaneously, and the Latria prison levels create a sense of gothic horror through lighting alone that survival horror games with far more explicit content have rarely matched. Demon's Souls Remake is a visual love letter to a world that deserved to be seen properly, and Bluepoint made sure the world could finally see it. Marvel's Spider-Man 2 is the most visually accomplished superhero game ever made. Insomniac Games took the already stunning foundation of the first game and the Miles Morales spin-off and pushed every single element further. A bigger New York City, more dynamic weather, more detailed crowds, and the visual fidelity that makes swinging between skyscrapers at full speed one of the most purely exhilarating visual experiences gaming has ever produced. The black symbiote suit, which bonds to Peter Parker mid-game, is a technical marvel of fluid simulation. The living alien material moves across Peter's body with his own weight and momentum. Every transformation sequence is a showcase of real-time simulation that no other game has matched. And the faces, especially Peter Parker and Miles Morales, carry the entire emotional weight of the narrative through micro-expressions of extraordinary precision. There is a moment between Peter and Miles near the end of the game where everything that has been built across 3 titles, years of friendship, conflict and shared sacrifice, is communicated entirely through 2 faces, 2 sets of eyes, 2 performances captured and rendered with humanity that makes you forget entirely that you are looking at a game. Elden Ring is the largest and most visual ambitious world From Software has ever built. Every landscape communicates a history through its composition. The sense of scale in Elden Ring is generally unmatched in open world gaming, not because the world is the largest ever built, but because every element of it has been sized and composed to make the player feel small in a world built for beings far greater than themselves. The armor design is extraordinary, and the bosses are visual masterpieces of creature and character design rendered at a scale with a dynamism that makes every encounter feel like fighting something genuinely mythological. Elden Ring doesn't just look beautiful, it looks ancient. It looks like a world that existed long before you arrived and will exist long after you leave. And that feeling of being a small, mortal thing moving through an immortal landscape is the most powerful visual achievement in the game. The world of Red Dead Redemption 2 is the most complete simulation of a natural environment ever constructed in gaming. All NPCs act like real people with a real life. They have names, daily routines, and unique reactions depending on your choices. Greet them, insult them, help them out, or rob them blind. They will remember, and the world will respond consequently. It's this attention to detail that makes Rockstar's open world feel less like a game and more like a living, breathing place. Grass moves in wind, snow accumulates dynamically, rivers flow with current simulation that affects swimming and crossing. And the skies is a thing of beauty. Sunsets are not a graphical effect, they are an event. But the greatest visual achievement of Red Dead Redemption 2 is Arthur's Morgan face. A face that carries the entire weight of the game's narrative without even needing to announce it. His eyes communicate a journey from certainty to redemption with a humanity that no other game character has ever matched. There is a scene near the end of the game where Arthur watches the sunrise from a mountaintop. His face catches the first light of morning, and everything the game has been building is visible in that face, in that light, in that moment. It is the most beautiful thing gaming has ever produced, and it is the perfect way to end this list. If you have watched this entire video, you probably have your own moment, your own game. That specific frame, that sunset, that face, that storm, that reflection in wet asphalt that made you put on the controller and just look. That moment is what this list is really about. Not gameplay, not frame rates. The moment when a game stops being a game and becomes a place. A real, breathing, beautiful place that you don't want to leave. Tell me in the comments what game made you sit mid-game just to look. The moment that stopped you completely. I want to know. Drop a like if you enjoy it and subscribe to the channel to not miss anything. Thank you for your company, I'm Yogito, and I see you in the next video.